Welcome, everybody, to For Whom the Bell Tolls, episode number 3, starring Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. Now, I want to welcome everybody here who's live. I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching on replay. If you're live, feel free to comment, of course, in the chat. If you are watching on replay, absolutely comment and let me know when you're watching this and where you're watching it from, because I want to be able to schedule these out really to accommodate as many people as possible. So with that said, I want to welcome Mike to the channel. I also want to quickly say from both of us, get well soon to Matt, the Beard of Darkness, who's in the hospital till Friday. Awesome dude. And I know he's probably watching. So Matt, get well soon.
Yes,
Mike, how are you tonight?
Man, each day's just better than the last, Brian. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic.
No, I'm totally jealous of you being able to use Bell in your branding so much. It works for so many things. It really does.
It really does. And Mike's caught on to the fact that I've got that other company that we sell our flask and we call it Bell Flask. And I actually use the exact same color schemes for BellTube as I do with Bell Flask.
Good branding. I admire good branding. I do.
Oh, we're going to talk about business tonight, folks.
Great.
We have, really, before we get into, I have a laundry list of questions for everybody, and I'm going to, recognize everybody here in the chat in a moment. But I want to give everybody a little bit of an understanding, and Mike as well, because Mike has had such an influence on my reading. Before we came on camera, I quickly jotted down off the top of my head the books and the series that Mike is 100% responsible for me reading. And this list is extensive and it is awesome. And if you want to know where my book tastes have largely come from over the last 3 or 4 years, check this list out. The Bound and the Broken series, I've read every book because of Mike. Red Rising, read every book because of Mike. The Warlord Chronicles, read every book. Faithful and the Fallen, read every book because of Mike. First Law, Joe Abercrombie, one of my favorite authors of all time, read all 9 books because of Mike. Where are we? The Band, Nicholas Eames, because of Mike, both books. How about Dune? We're going to talk about Dune a little bit tonight because of Mike. How about Swan Song? Because of Mike. Lonesome Dove, Mike's and my book of the year last year because of Mike. Dark Matter, Recursion. I had no idea who Blake Crouch even was before Mike. How about the Rhaenyra Revelations? All of those books because of Mike. Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, one of my favorite all-time sci-fis of all time, because of Mike. Hyperion, because of Mike. He held that book up and he was talking about how his brother had it and he always thought the cover was cool. And then I thought that cover was cool. I was like, all right, I don't know anything about Hyperion, but Mike has not let me down yet. And of course, Sun Eater. I am currently about 100 pages into Demon in White because of Mike. It doesn't end there, folks. Let's move on to television. Battlestar Galactica because of Mike.
Yes.
For All Mankind because of Mike. Avatar, The Last Airbender. Now he's got me watching cartoons, okay?
Dude, it's so good.
But it's freaking great. Now, that is an amazing list. If I added all those books up, I don't even know. It's got to be 50 or 60.
My apologies to your bottom line.
Oh, my God. Right? And speaking of that bottom line, don't forget, folks, we have a new Patreon. It'll be in the description.
You got to support these habits, you guys. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before I get into the questions, let me just give a quick couple of shout outs here in the chat because I want to welcome everybody.
Hey,
so our friend Matt on Books, he put this in the chat at 6:45 a.m. our time this morning because he is presently sleeping. And Dee is in the UK right now, and she stayed up late and is missing sleep to join us tonight. We have our pal Heidi is here, of course, and Darko. I love Darko's channel. Welcome on in. And this guy. Oh boy. What needs to be said about this guy?
So is that from Hemingway or is that from Metallica or both?
Both and my name and it goes back, if like I said, while we got this guy on, I'm sure it'll go back to Beowulf at some point.
Everything will go back to
It
Beowulf.
all goes back to Beowulf. Who else do we got
It's like
here?
my wife accused me of saying that I think that everything ripped off Dune and or Stephen King, and I'm like, I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Sarah Beth, welcome on in, and couple of shout outs to Beard of Darkness as well,
Right.
just in case he's watching.
Kendall
To
some
s-
that's a great channel, man. It's a great
it,
name.
you know, between the two of you, you guys are both the hardest working men in show business, and
Okay.
we're gonna talk about that tonight. Heidi, Brian? Did you love yesterday's Shogun? So good. Yep, we're gonna talk about that tonight. We got Britain's here. We'll say hi to Britain. And I want to buzz through these guys as quick as possible because we do have Michael just got home from work, got to work overtime because Mike keeps talking about these books. He will do that to you. It's insidious. It's like you clip on his videos, and then the next thing you know, you're like on Goodreads adding to your TBR.
I love supporting you guys' bad habits. I love it.
It it is insane. So as you guys know, if you've been on the last couple of episodes, I try to prepare some questions that, and I watch a lot of BookTube, as I know a lot of you guys do too, and Mike does as well. But I try to find some areas that maybe haven't been covered in every single interview. And I'm sure I'm going to have some repeat questions here, but I wanted to start out today with your podcasting background. Because you've mentioned a lot of times that you've come from a podcasting background, and that kind of enabled you to, number one, handle some criticisms, but also be comfortable, on the microphone. How is that experience, podcasting? Tell us when you started podcasting, and how did that affect your start when you made your very first YouTube upload?
Oh, like you follow me on Twitter, so you know I'm a big sports fan, and I actually came up in sports writing for the Rockets and the Texans. And I was really frustrated with sports radio because they never talked about what I wanted them to talk about, or they weren't. You could tell that if their team was affiliated with that channel, they couldn't actually be truthful. It was kind of like the Big Brother kind of thing. So I was like, I
Sure.
want to make like a no holds barred. But you can swear if you want to, which if with Houston sports, you're going to be swearing a lot. As a Minnesota fan, you know this. It's
I
one of those things
do.
where I said I want to change. So I just started doing the podcast like on my own. It was not a very fresh start. I mean, I was literally writing a script and stuff before I went and just reading off of it before I got to the
Okay.
point where I felt comfortable talking. But it's invaluable because it got to the point to where I didn't have to say 1,200 times. There was no dead spaces. There was no let me look for this. And it got to the point where I could just make some bullet lists and know how to just talk about them. And that's why now I can talk about my Twin Peaks coffee mug for 20 minutes if you ask me to.
That's incredible, and I think that that's a commonality that if there is a such thing as booktube jealousy, which I have found, at least compared to my old business, this is like the nicest business waters to swim in,
Right.
because for at least in what they call this corner of booktube, which I think Mike has a huge hand in, and if you take a look at all the channels that have come out since Mike launched his, it's a real, there's some pretty clear lines where, the hierarchy has come from, that you can tell got their start really watching Mike's stuff. But yeah, that's super interesting to me because, like I said, that if there was a jealousy, that's the common thread that we always hear about Mike is, how does this guy come on and have a conversation with the camera without all the ahs and without all the ums, and as close as possible to a one take video as you get. And I'm sure behind the scenes, there's probably things that we don't know, but all things considered, I have a pretty good eye for cuts, and there's not a lot of them going on in Mike's world.
Behind the scenes, the only thing you would know is if I have a cut, it's because either I sneeze, I live in the suburbs, someone's motorcycle drove down the street, or kids. Yeah. So most of
Got
my
it.
videos I try to do in one take. I feel like if you do get off topic or going around or whatever, people find that personable. So I just started leaving in. I used to cut out like my coffee sips. Now I'm like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I want to feel like you're hanging out with me, and I'm gonna have to take a sip of my coffee if we're hanging out, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's such an authenticity to it, and it's you and I are business guys, and that'll bring me to my next question, because if you guys don't know, Mike and I, as far as I'm aware, and maybe there's outliers, but we're really the only two fantasy booktubers that I know that are also business majors.
Right.
And they don't always really go hand in hand. I was a nightclub owner that was into nerdy fantasy and sci-fi books. The Venn diagram overlap of that is very small. So I have a question, because I also think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that are you the first person in your family to graduate with a business degree, or any college
I
degree?
am a first generation college student. For the longest time, my family, it was, well, nobody in our family goes to college. And I went a little later. I didn't go back to school till I was 37. And
Yeah,
but I did go and finish. And like I said, first in the family to do it. But yeah.
that's awesome. Same here. For me, it was a little bit different. My dad had just kind of upped and moved to Hawaii instead of going to college or finishing off college, and my mom had a family business that she wanted to go work with her father on, so she never finished college. But I was really the first one, and when I got there, I was debating between. I went to Madison. I was debating between acting and business school, which again have absolutely nothing in
Yeah, here's
common.
my thing. Business or being a music teacher. I said, well, which one do I got a better chance at, making a livable wage off of?
Right. Well, and especially at 37 years old, when
Yeah.
you went back to school, you had other concerns.
Well, I mean, see, like I'd already worked in business for 12 years at that point, but it was that thing where they don't want to pay you what you're doing unless you got that piece of paper. And so I said, yeah, I got to go back and do
That's
this. And I had a perfect opportunity. The time my employer was paying for school, so I was just going part time, and then that company got acquired, and I had a 2 year degree. I was like, well, that's 2 year degree's worthless. You can't do anything with it, and you went too far to turn around now. So I applied for a scholarship, and somehow I got it.
that's just fantastic to know. When you Let's talk about this for a second. I want to dig into that. So when you decided, okay, I'm going to go to get a business degree, have you always been a numbers guy, because you were a finance major and a marketing minor? Have you always been a numbers guy, or did you go to business school thinking that you wanted to study finance, or did you decide
I
within
mean,
business
yeah,
school you wanted to do
at
finance?
that point, I'd been working in accounting, like I said, for like 12 years. That just kind of fell into that. It was, I mean, literally, like I worked retail for a long time because, like I said, it felt like, hey, you don't have a college degree, you can't do anything except retail or food industry, right? And I believed
Sure.
that. So I think I worked in retail till I was like 26. Just wanted to get out of those hours and get like a Monday through Friday regular hours job. So a friend of mine had a job this place. I started working in the warehouse, and then they had an opening come up, and I applied for it, and it turned out I was a natural at it. But it's funny because I was terrible at math in high school. It was like this like
Right.
left side, right side of the brain kind of thing, where it's like literature and history, wizard, math, complete idiot. But the thing is when you get into finance, Excel does most of it for you.
It kind, it's so funny. So when I was in business school, and we have the marketing piece in common, because marketing was one of my majors, but there was no internet yet. And so there was very limited Excel spreadsheets. I mean, everything was kind of done by hand, which made for all the finance classes and all the accounting classes basically becoming weed out classes for the
Right.
business school administrators, because they wanted to see, all right, who's actually going to take their time and study. And they would pile on 3-4 hours of accounting homework every single night for the sole purpose of getting people to quit, because there was more people, trying to get into this, school program than there couldn't be. So I gravitated towards the management side and the marketing side, because I had kind of had enough of the numbers. But it sounds like to me that was kind of a natural fit for you into the business school.
I think what surprised me is that I never thought I had any interest in marketing. I had to realize that there was more to marketing to sales, because I was like, I heard the word sales, and I'm like, shh, I don't want to, because honestly it was like, I don't want to rely on my salary being if I make a sale or not, because then you start
Hmm.
pressing and stuff like that. So I had no idea there was sides of marketing that weren't just sales. You can be an ideas person, and you can be a corporate communications person. And really, honestly, I that was right when this channel was taking off, was when I was taking all those courses, and I didn't mean to market or a minor in marketing, but I really liked it, and I was like using a lot of that stuff onto the channel, and I was like, wow, some of these ideas are actually really good. So I took like 4 years of it,
I think it's awesome. What kind of projects did you do? Like, I'm sure you had like, did you have like group projects or did you have like
You
more
know,
solo projects?
basically we're like you have brand recognition, and I think the thing was it was like they took an example of like Dunkin' Donuts, who was just like a worldwide name, and why they would actually change their name, without all those years of brand recognition, things like that. But I think back in college, what it was I was Jordan Peele. I was writer, director, and producer every time there was a group project because
Okay.
no one else cared.
Right.
Where I was like, I've got to get a 4.0 or else I'm not doing my job here. So that's the
Right.
benefit of going to school as an adult, is you
So,
take your classes very seriously.
so were those people that were in your group younger, more, typical
Yes.
collegiate age people?
Yes. So yeah, I was taking we did is my wife's a teacher, so she went back to school when I got the scholarship because I had to go full time, and it was perfect timing. So I stayed home with the kids and did my classes online virtually. And so a lot of it is, where you have to interact. All of them are, I mean, the thing is like people don't realize is when you added in online schooling, all kinds of age, every walk of life are there. It's not just
Right.
18, 19 year olds, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. But a lot of them honestly were like really respectful. They wanted to learn, they wanted to learn. So I loved it, especially when you got into like the finance classes and stuff. They wanted to know what my experience was like and what to expect because, they know that just having a degree with zero experience isn't going to get you your dream
Right.
job.
You are almost, a walking, talking life example for them of experience that typically they're not going to get, somebody that's maybe, geez, would it be about 20-ish years older, 15-ish years older than them that have had that life experience. That would have been cool.
No,
I
just
don't,
like the company I work at now, there'll be people who come in with a master's and they can't get a job. It's like, I'm glad you're smart, but you're 22. You have zero work experience. And I'm like,
isn't, I
that's
mean,
terrible.
it's, it's really weird. I have, we could talk about this forever, but we'll get more back into books. But I mean, there's an ROI on everything, right? And there's a return on an investment. And it's interesting that, like, for what you did in particular, it's a great return. For one, your company was helping, to pay for it, but also for the time that you spent, it certainly has been rewarding to your career. Whereas I think a lot of people go into college and they're not really sure what they want to do. And it's difficult to put a financial return on investment in today's market, I think. There is, of course, a return on investment in your ability to think and grow and understand other people and all the philosophical things that our buddy Jared can tell us about and Dr. Philip can tell us about the advantages there. But I really just appreciate the fact that you recognized at a time in your life that you said, you know what, my journey's not done yet. I can take this in a totally different direction
It
if I
was one of
want to.
those things where I said, I keep finding a reason to put it off. First it was, oh, I'll do it after the wedding. And then it was, oh, after the kid's born. Oh, after the second kid's born. And just one day I just said, this paycheck to paycheck stuff's no fun. And I said,
Right.
I got to change something. I want to kind of break the cycle, be an example. And it was my wife. She's a teacher. She went to SFA. I kind of want to set that example for your kids, that it's what you do. You go, but I also say it's okay. Some people who take some time, like people who go straight and get their masters. I'm sorry, guys. I know we're adulting here big time, but I want to get this out here. Is that a lot of people will think I'm going to go to school. I'm just going to get my masters and get it over with. I tell people, get your undergrad, go get a job, get some experience, then go get your masters because experience is going to trump that stuff every single time.
I totally agree. Especially in today's world where even if you have that piece of paper and you don't have experience, we have AIs that are reading all the resumes these days. And if you don't have certain things there that is life experience that you can bring to the table, I think it is a lot more challenging. Folks, Mike and I could talk about business for 2 hours and probably
Sorry.
bore the shit out of all of
This is
you
the first
guys.
time anyone's had any interest in talking about this stuff, so I'm just like all in. Let's do it.
Well, and that's what the whole purpose of For Whom the Bell Tolls is really all about, is I want to find things that maybe some of the guests haven't talked about on other channels. So let's, of course, now being said that, let's talk about this thing called Mike's book reviews, because
Okay.
I'm sure you've never talked about that before, but we're going to jump around to lots of different topics
Sure.
tonight, folks. Authenticity is the name of the game on Mike's book reviews. I really believe when you watch him, what you see is what you get. I don't think the camera comes off and there's a totally different human being behind, the scenes. Explain if you can, like when you have this kind of an authentic approach, does it help kind of in a relaxing manner in your preparation to make a video? In other words, do you come at it more relaxed knowing you're basically just going to be you having a conversation?
I think so. When I was on Moy's channel, he was just like blown away by this. He was like, "So you're telling me that you'll 5 o'clock in the evening, you'll decide you're going to record a video and you'll make your notes, record your video, edit it, and all that stuff before bed." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's how I do it all the time." I was like, the script's all up here, buddy. And I know that's just something that not everybody can do, but and I'm not humble bragging about or anything, but
Right.
that's why I've been able to do this as consistently as I have for 5 years, because I'm just going to talk about this stuff anyway. My wife's glad I'm doing it with you guys instead of always doing it with her now. Honestly, I think she's a little jealous now, but still, she knows more about Dark Tower and Dune for someone who's never read it than
Isn't
anyone
that
else in the
crazy?
world, because of how much I talked about. So she's glad I had that outlet to do it. But yeah, I think the comfort in just knowing I am just fixed camera angle. I'm going to turn on the camera and talk to you guys. I'm not going to do skits. I'm not going to do green screen stuff. I'm not going to do all the fancy graphics. I'm just going to kind of keep it simple. And I think that's just kind of what I was going for.
I think it resonates tremendously with your audience. And, you've done things on a business level, which I totally understand when it comes to like brand stuff, because I'm sure you get, offers constantly from various brands and they see a subscriber count and they see an amount of views and they probably want to
I
offer
mean, I
you
thought
the,
that's what you were when you sent me the flasks.
no, that was just more of a, hey, thanks, brother. If you ever go to a concert, you want to get past the metal detector with, an adult beverage of your choice and not pay $20 there.
My
You know,
wife used it on the last cruise. Just let you know, she did
I love
to get some Jack Daniels on there. Yeah.
that's awesome. We saw a lot of them for cruises. Uh, Tell us how this is. You've got lots going on, right? So you got a full-time job. You put out at least 3 videos a week, or at least two, but usually three. You've got a wife. You've got 2 kids. You read. You have outside interests. How do you manage your time? Do you specifically schedule it, or has it become kind of like like ingrained in you, where you just this is how every day looks?
I always tell people I have 3 hobbies: movies, TV, video games, and reading. Reading's locked. That's my favorite hobby. It has been since I was 13 years old. So that's never going away. But I only have time for 2 of those. So if I'm watching a lot of TV, gaming's gone. If I've got a
Right.
new game I'm really into, TV or whatever's gone. But I think the key for me, and you'll see this a lot, and this is going to sound so okay, boomer. It is, but I was like, the biggest thing, guys, is just put the phone down, quit scrolling social media. I don't do TikTok. I've tried. Nothing will turn me into my parents faster, but I'll see my wife
Yeah.
sit there and watch TikTok for 3 hours, and she's like, "Oh, it's great because it's only 60 seconds." Not if you watch it for 3 hours, though. So
Right.
people are like, "How do you find the time?" Like, I don't watch a ton of TV unless it's like football season, but even then, that's just one day. You know, usually. I'm not the I got to watch every team every game. I'm following my team kind of. If it's a
Right.
big game, I'll watch it. But and I make sure that I just don't sit there on social media all the time. I use it mostly, for marketing purposes. I'll have times where I like to just go on Twitter and just bullshit around. It's fun. But I don't spend a lot of time on that, and I think that helps a lot with just making sure that I get things done that I need to get done. Make sure I'm spending time with my kids the way that I do. And that's why I will just completely like disappear. But I think you can see these permanent bags I have under my eyes. I forego some sleep
That's
to
why
read because that's
tinted glasses, my brother.
yeah, that's pretty much my real secret is people all the time be like, how much do you read per day? I'm like, man, I don't do that. It just varies, sometimes more than others. If I get a really good rip at night, man, I'll read way past my bedtime where I'm like, I need to go to bed. I got the alarms going off in 4 hours, but that's where I do the most of my readings in bed after about 9 o'clock.
Well, let me ask you about that. About how much on a weeknight when you're getting up for work, how many hours of sleep you get a night?
I mean, I try to get about 7, but
Okay.
that's not always the case. But I try to do like 10:30 to 5:30 if I can.
That's awesome. I mean, 7 is, I think, kind of the magic number to keep your brain sort of functioning
Odd
properly.
numbers work better for me. If I do 6 or 8, I'm a mess. But 7, I seem to be just right.
7, you've dialed that in.
5s and 7s, yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, for me, it's really different because I spent, close to 2 decades going to bed at 4 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning every night, and then trying to get up and still have a normal day, which is very, very strange.
Hey, before I forget, and I know this is your interview segment, but I gotta ask, now that you're getting like a bigger audience, have you started getting mean comments yet?
Maybe 1 or 2, and that's how I knew that I've made it.
You've arrived.
I've arrived. Just basically, a couple here and there. I don't know what this is, and I don't know what this is, and I don't understand how this. I've grossly misinterpreted. Whatever the intent of the author was. Probably during Cradle has been really the biggest one. And I have to tell you, Mike, I'm on book 12 of Cradle right
I
now.
can't believe you went that far.
I'm on book 12. I hear it gets good at the second half. So,
No, you asked about criticism earlier. Yeah, guys, I podcasted and wrote about sports, and there's no bigger source of vitriol than sports because everybody thinks you hate their team, and well, you just know how it goes. It's nasty out there. And then I talked about movies and TV and just like pop culture overall. I mean, again, nothing but comic book guys out there. It was awful. So that's why people are always like, "How do you just shake this off so much?" I was just like, if you really, I mean, if someone is going to take the time out of their day to say something completely awful to a person they'll never meet on a YouTube video because they had a different opinion about a book. I mean, I'm sorry, I struggle for a better word than what a loser. I'm not gonna lose sleep over that. Sometimes I think it's bullshit. But
yeah,
just because I respond nicely doesn't mean I say nice things out loud when
right.
I read them. But that's what they want. They want you to say something nasty back.
Yeah, I mean they're called trolls for a reason probably, and they're trolling for that interaction to have some drama in their life.
Thanks for the engagement. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Hey, our search and discover software loves it when you make a comment. So terrific. We appreciate that. You know, again, having all this background in hospitality, I've been told the worst of the worst. Your club is terrible, your DJ sucks, your bartenders are the worst. And I try, obviously that you don't last 15 years in a business like that being terrible at it. So
Sure.
I have let that kind of, they say there's a saying up here, I don't know if it's a Texas saying as well, but water off a duck's back. It just, it just kind of goes off. Yeah. So anything that I get for a BookTube comment compared to some of the stuff that has been screamed at in my face by violent individuals, no biggie. But for the most part, we have a pretty forgiving, fantasy and sci-fi community.
You've seen some shit, huh? Is that what you're saying?
I have seen some shit. There's no doubt. I want to ask you, most of your BookTube journey, and I don't know if it goes back before you were actually filming BookTube, but you had been known up until the last year or so as a total TBR planner. Your year was, I mean, there's videos that these are in ink and these are in not ink, but they're in, pretty heavy number 2 pencil. And this is what I'm doing this year. And I'm a finance guy and I'm a data guy. And this is how I organize myself. And you've made that change now, not entirely, but there's certainly a difference between Mike today when it comes to what he's going to read versus Mike 2 years ago. And I want to ask you what that's been like and what's your experience been with that so far?
It's awful. I'm a complete nervous wreck about it. Cause I mean, like I said, finance, you plan everything when you're forecasting 12 to 15 months at a time. And so you're telling me, I don't know what I'm reading next month.
Right.
It's just completely nerve wracking, but it's one of those things where I felt like I was letting some people down when I say, "Hey, I'm going to read this entire series," and then I read book 1. I'm like, "Oh no," It's one of those things where I was like, "I'm going to say I'll do book 1 if I like it, I'll continue." Because there were people who were like, "Oh, Mike's going to read this. I'm going to go buy the whole set."
Right.
And then I quit after book 1. And I think it was Codex Alera was the one where I quit like in book 2, and I felt awful because that was my read along.
Right.
And I felt awful about it to where I was like, that's where I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to start saying, hey, let's all get book one if you want to join me, and we'll kind of go from there.
Here's a tough question for you. I'm known for tough questions. No, I'm not.
Sure.
I'm kidding. If your channel was smaller and you had started the Codex Alera, let's just say you had 500 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, 1,500 subscribers, would you have stopped it?
I really don't know if that played into it at all. I just felt like I felt like I was being a wet blanket. It's really what it was, because there were other people enjoying it. Last thing I want, like, we were doing that Dark Tower read along, and I started griping about the parts I gripe about Dark Tower. And I was like, I feel like I'm being a wet blanket, so
Right.
I'm just gonna kind of stop. So
Got it.
really, it was more just like, if other people were enjoying it, I want them to enjoy it. I don't want to be the one there being like, man, this is not what I thought it was. I feel let down. I just didn't want to be that.
You didn't want to be like, well, speaking of wild and crazy, I have one wild and crazy Dr. Philip Chase on with us next week. So, yeah, we're going to get
It's
him.
going to be crazy town. Watch out, man. Philip gets wild on live streams. Watch out.
He is. So it's been, you said you're a nervous wreck about not having this extended TBR. Do you see yourself going, a period of time and maybe reassessing that, or is this just sort of your new path?
I gotta believe eventually I'm gonna get to the point where I've read all the long series, and I can get to the point where I'm just reading. I don't know. I mean, it's fantasy. There's not a ton of standalones, but
Right.
I gotta think there's gonna be a point eventually where I've gotten to the point where, like, I've read all the big series. I can get down to some of these smaller things now. Who knows?
I keep thinking that, but I did a video the other day, and it's like I had 33 or 34 series I'm still in the middle of right now.
That's why I laugh when someone accuses me of skimming. I'm like, so wouldn't I have never DNF'd a series? I would have just skimmed it to finish.
Right. Right. I mean, but I think that there are, like, it probably wouldn't take too long. Like, I saw that Janny Wirtz sent you quite a care package.
Oh, yeah.
And talk about what a fantastic individual. I've watched her on several interviews.
She's super nice.
Yeah, she reached out to me and had some interaction on X, and she sent me to Ride Hell's Chasm, which is going to be in my April TBR. But talk about another series that will,
But she told me, she said, I saw you just finished Realm of the Elderling, so I thought I'd shoot my shot. You got room for another overly long series. Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it's denser. It's denser. So yeah,
I admire that she does like all of her own artwork and stuff too. That's really cool.
She
Writer,
is
director, producer. There we go.
She's really a Jane of all trades. When you get to listen to her interviews and you hear about her outside interests beyond writing, it's incredible. My mom is just a few years older than her, and she was watching her interview with Tori the other day, and she had to stop the interview because she was so impressed. She was like, I have to process with what Janny's talking about, because this is just total wisdom, and I want to let it sink in. So
Sounds like when I'm interviewing, or I was talking with Philip and AP Canada, and I was like, I'm not smart enough to be in this conversation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we pick our battles when we get into those group talks, I think. Matt from Matt on Books put me in the interview with Alan and Jimmy Nuts. And that was something else. The three of us, normally under normal circumstances, I would be probably, the Mr. Enthusiasm, but you throw Alan in there and then you throw his pal Jimmy on there. Yeah. The groups do make a difference. I'm going to just keep moving down my list. But again, if there's stuff that you want to go through, we can do that. Have you found yourself within fantasy or sci-fi gravitating lately to more specific subgenres at all?
I try to change it up so much, but I guess you'd say I'm getting more interested in historical fiction, because I see Shogun back there, which I'm reading right now. I actually read a little bit this afternoon. I got about 200 pages left, and it's amazing. It's an amazing book. I did done some Bernard Cornwell. What did I do? I'm going to be doing more Ken Follett. So, I think I'm kind of trying to get more into that, because there's been some that have worked for me really, really well and some that haven't. So I think it just kind of depends on how much it feels like fantasy, because a lot of, obviously, 13th through 15th century stuff on Earth feels like fantasy, just without dragons and without magic, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I think I'm trying to get into that a little more. Like, I want to read the Uhtred books, because I did love Last Kingdom. And my friend Madison's been really, really just like blowing me up about trying the Uhtred books because of how much I did like the series, and she's going through that right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that. But I always try to change it up. If I read like too much grimdark after a while, I get depressed.
Right.
So I have to space it out. And I thought that would be a good time to start Discworld. When I started getting like a little too glum or whatever. But I try to throw in like a thriller or a Stephen King book or something to kind of change it up. But I guess you'd say that historical fiction is something I'm trying to get a little bit
Historical
more of on.
fiction. Yeah, and I saw that you spoke so highly of Pillars of the Earth, and I know I'm going to wind up reading it probably late in the year because the TBR is getting, a little crazy.
That'll happen to you. Yeah.
It does. And what I found out is that my reading pace has slowed a little bit because of BookTube, because I'm, constantly trying to come up with some different ideas and what I want to do with the channel to kind of make it my own brand and a little bit different. But that's absolutely bit into the reading time. And I'm very grateful for your advice to put the phone down and put the phone in another room, because if I wasn't doing that, I don't know that I would be getting any reading done at all.
Like I said, the reason I bought a Kindle was for eye strain, and that's true. But another reason is distractions. When I was used to read on my iPad, you have all your apps right there. Oh, let me just look up something real quick. Next thing you
Right.
know, it's been 30 minutes you haven't been reading. So that
Right.
was really a big reason I decided to move on from it. But yeah, you got to get away from the all. If they're there, you're going to use them. You know.
Let me ask you a question that I know nobody's asked you before.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So you have mentioned that the book Dune came to you at a very pivotal point in your life,
Mhm.
which the timing was perfect. The message in the book was perfect. And I'm sure with all the rereads you've done, you've, got new meaning out of it each time that you read it. But at the particular point in time that you read it, it really, as I recall, you said it shaped kind of who you became.
Mm.
Here's my question. If we believe in a multiverse and we believe there's another Earth out there and another Mike who's that same age, but the book Dune was never written, what book would you want that Mike in that multiverse to read?
Wow. Hell, I don't know. I don't know about one that would like kind of like I say shape my worldview, kind of like Frank Herbert did. But hell, I don't know. I'd probably just be reading Lord of the Rings over and over again. I don't know.
Would that be the one? Would that be like if
I
you
mean,
could
like
now?
I said, I think that's more just because it taught me to build friendships and to kind of never stop using your imagination, never give up hope, kind of things. And I guess those are all good messages. But I
I
don't
mean,
know. I don't know. That's a great question.
Dune is very unique because there's just a lot, to live in that world in your mind. But like I said, if that book didn't exist, that's interesting that Lord of the Rings, if that was in its place, I wonder, does that change trajectory a little bit? I don't know. Just a random
I'd
question.
have to think about that. That's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there's something I can think of later and be like, oh, yeah, that's like. I mean, I think about like a lot of my favorite books are Stephen King books, but I can't think of any of those that were like, oh, yeah, that shaped the person that I became.
Right.
I don't think it's really that way. I don't think that there's anything that's really kind of. And that's why Dune has resonated with me so much, because I felt like it was transformative to me. But I don't know. It's a great
I,
question.
I think it's something that as you continue your reading journey, maybe you'll have that in mind at some point going, all right, Brian asked me that one time, if I didn't find Dune, maybe it's this book. Maybe 2 years from now, you're reading something for the first time going, you know what? This could have been it.
Well, I
So
think about something like something I just said automatically is like a top 10 book of all time, or like Lonesome Dove. It's like I
yeah,
love the book, but I don't think that there's anything where I say I would use that when I'm 15 to kind of shape my way of life. I just want to be awesome like Gus. I
right.
have no idea.
Right. I mean, there's plenty to like about those characters, but there's
Yes,
also plenty to, I don't know.
you still
Uh,
got your whores.
that's right.
Such a
What's the
great
guy
book.
with the hat? Lippy? Was that the guy with the hat? Oh my gosh. What an amazing book. Let's talk. You mentioned Stephen King for a second. I want to talk about one of your best performing videos that you've ever made is your top 10 horror books, I think, right?
That's
Uh,
my number one. Yeah.
that's your number one. How I'm not very well read in horror. And as a matter of fact, when I read Swan Song, it had horror elements that I honestly was not expecting. And The Dark Tower for me is an all-time top 5 favorite series. I think when I did my fantasy series rankings, I think at the time, and you know how those things can kind of change a little bit here
Sure.
and there, but I think at the time it was number 4. And there were horrific elements in there, but it didn't like feel like a scary book in any way. How do you describe horror to somebody that's maybe shied away from it thinking that, oh, I'm going to go to bed terrified or scared or grossed out? Or what's the appeal? Is it like a adrenaline rush? Is it just a different way of reading? What
I
do you
mean,
think?
I think back. I always think back to this quote I read from Jim Henson back, gosh, before he passed. Clearly, obviously, but he was talking about in the '80s when he made the Dark Crystal, and he said a bunch of parents came to him telling him how could you make a movie this scary for kids, and he was saying he feels like it's good for kids to be a little scared because it can just teach them, that you're not always safe, to kind of keep your head on a swivel kind of thing. So I don't know if necessarily it's kind of like that for me, because what I constantly have said was I feel like once you're past a certain age, can a horror movie or a horror book actually scare you? I feel like for me, it's just that sense of dread. I think that's something I kind of picked up from Lovecraft, is that Lovecraft was just a master of like creating atmosphere, creating dread, the fear of the unknown kind of thing. And it's just something that's just kind of always made me feel like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm safe, but you know what? If a book's really good, I'm kind of like, what was that noise? I think like
Right?
that's something. Yeah, so maybe a little bit of an adrenaline rush, but I think it's just because it's just so different than anything else out there, where it's just like this could never happen, or could it? That kind of thing is always just kind of interested me.
I think I don't know. I think I've been trying to be intentionally very careful about what I let into my mind because I sometimes get a little bit wary of my own self, subconscious. And if I'm inputting stuff that is maybe on the horrific side of things, is that where my brain will take me? But in the same sense, I love Swan Song. It was, if not for Lonesome Dove, it would have easily been my book of the year last year. And there's absolutely horror
That was
elements
my
in there.
last two books of the year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you've had a ginormous influence on my reading, and I think it's probably because our tastes generally align for the most part. I know you're not a lit RPG guy. Unfortunately, you got, hit with cultivation fantasy instead of
don't
lit
don't
RPG.
tell Christopher Rocchio. He'll start flipping tables. He doesn't want to read about your D&D game. Damn it.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe one day we'll see. Uh, Let me ask you. So, you've been cited by a wide variety of other booktubers as kind of their inspiration, like I've talked about. I know Talking Story and John Minton is in the comments. He's mentioned you were really his inspiration for doing that. There's kind of like my first find that gave us the thought of doing a channel. What past or present booktubers inspired you either for your TBR or your influence and how you go about making a video or your content creation, or maybe you just like their videos, and they could be people that influenced you at the beginning, they could be people that continue to.
See, my thing is I kind of fell into this by accident. Is the story I've told was I was reading Wheel of Time for the first time, and the plan was at the moment, because the only reason I picked it up is because they were making a TV show of it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna read it first. I've always put it off, but I'll read it now. And I said I was just gonna stay ahead of the TV show. And the rumor was they were gonna be doing 2 books a season. Well, we know now it just,
Right
anyways.
out the door.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so I just read the first 2 books, and then I had planned on stopping. And I was like, well, I can't stop. But I said, I'm going to forget these if I take long breaks. So I said, since I've got the camera out already, because I was doing a podcast, video podcast with my friend Danny at the time. So since I got the camera out, I'll just go ahead and record my thoughts so I can go back to them for references and look at them. And I thought I was just going to keep those on my computer, and just, I was scared of my computer crashing or something like that. So I said, whatever, I'll just upload them to YouTube. That way they'll always be there, kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I go in there like, why do I got like 1,000 views on these videos? What in the world? I never get 1,000 views on YouTube. What's going on? And then I was like, all the comments were like, you should check out this person's channel, this person. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is BookTube? I had no idea it was a thing. So I looked up a couple people. I was like, holy crap. Like, I think Nate Bliss was his name. I was like, I had no idea that this was a thing.
Yeah,
So it really, I can't say that anybody really influenced me to start a channel because I was kind of already doing it. I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know BookTube was a genre or subgenre of YouTube. I had no idea what that was. So it was kind of like an accident. But when I saw that, and I'm not going to mention names because I don't want them to feel bad me referencing it like this, seeing that
sure.
there was people my age that were doing it, people a
Hmm.
little older that were doing it. I was like, oh, okay, because I just had that attitude of, well, YouTube's kind of a young man's game. That's why I'm going to
Right.
stick with. I got this face. That's why I'm going to stick with. That's why I'm going to stick with podcasting. Because it's just voice. So when I saw there was other people my age doing it, and there was people doing it about the books that I read, that's what really got me. I was like, wow, so people besides me read Stephen King and fantasy books. This is amazing. I know no one in real life that reads the books that I do.
It's
So
it's
I think
true.
it was more influenced that way. That there was actually my people, so to speak, out there. But I said I wanted to approach it with none of this rant stuff, none of this angry stuff. I wanted to create a positive community. That's what I wanted to do out of it. And that's what I still aim to. That's still my mission statement is to create a positive community. We have positive conversations on the internet
Right.
because Gen Xers, we were like that. We're like, dude, everybody used to be so chill. Why is everybody so angry now? So that's why I kind of wanted to go for the kind of the brand that I did. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's anybody like I was really influenced to start, but there's been several that I've like Murphy. I was watching her rather early. But she was someone was a little older talking about Harry Potter. I was like, wow, okay, so this is great. I was really excited about that when I filmed.
I think that that's incredible. One of the guys that I accidentally ran across that I think you've had on your channel and you've talked about before is Slowly Read.
Oh yeah,
And
Mark. Yeah.
and it was funny because I'm a big Sandman Slim guy and that series. I think somebody maybe had sent you that book. Otherwise, I was going to send it to you, but it'll get on your TBR one of these days. But I didn't before I even really knew too much about anybody besides you. I had looked up a review and it was Mark from Slowly Read talking about Sandman Slim, and I was like, this guy's rock and roller, man. This guy seems, he's pretty tatted up. I like this dude.
Yeah, it's one of those that I wish he'd come back, but real life gets in the way sometimes. That's something else that you'll see a lot is a lot of people will start doing this, but it's hard to keep going. It really is. It becomes there's a point where it becomes too much of a grind for some people, and unfortunately, the way that the our algorithm overlords, as I'll call them,
Right.
work is you fall out. It's hard to get back in, and it's hard for a lot of people to realize it's rare. You don't have overnight success. We're not all talking story. We're not all BellTube. We don't all grow so quick. Some of us have to actually like take our time and get there. But I feel like there's so many people now that are starting at a better point than I did because it's such an encouraging community. Everyone encourages you to go. Everybody loves to see new booktubers pop up, and they're real supportive, and that's great. But everybody now has perfect sound. They have perfect video. They have perfect lighting, and I mean, 5 years I still experiment with all this stuff. So I feel like they're starting from a place of power that people like me who started with looking like I was on a Nokia flip phone from 2002 because I was a podcaster and I didn't have all this fancy schmancy equipment. They're getting off to a better start than I was. So I'm surprised I'm still here, and I hate. I love that people still find those old Wheel
Hmm.
of Time videos. I love that because people will say I feel like I read the series with you because every time I finish a book, I'd go watch your video on it. That's great. I love hearing that, but I hate when that's someone's first experience with the channel as they see that with those awful production values.
Right.
And it's funny because I still will get comments every once in a while from a video from 2019 where someone's like, "Get a better camera, bro," and I'm like, "Watch a newer video, bro."
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about that then, because I think most people have said if they've been doing this for any period of time that their older videos they can't watch, they cringe when they see them. It's just like I'll never go back and watch them. How far back would you go in your catalog where you would say this is kind of the cutoff on where I think it started to look good, or
I think
that
not
it's not
necessarily like did
complete
it look
cringe?
good, but there was like once I created a format for my reviews because it used to just be turn on, talk about it, see what happens, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do spoilers, couldn't decide if I wanted to do non spoilers, couldn't decide if I wanted to do both. And I said when I came up with the format, what makes it good or bad, why you should read it, my final thought like that. When I came up with that format, I think it was around the time I did Salem's Lot. And it was a little after that, I think right after I finished Faithful and the Fallen was when I said, okay, this is getting big enough that I feel like I can sink money in a camera now. Because I put it off a long time. I was like, you guys want to pay for it? Sure. I'm not going to, at the time,
Right.
we were all living off of a teacher's salary while I was back in school. I wasn't going to go buy a $500 camera, you know? So once I started getting a little bit of successful stuff on here, I said, okay, I feel like this is an investment. I can sink some money into a camera, but I was over 10,000 subs still going off of a webcam, you know? So
That's incredible. That blows me away. I've mentioned it before, but when I started doing this, hey, by the way, tomorrow's my 4-month anniversary of BookTube. So yay. Happy 4 months to all of the
dude, do you know how long it took
BellTube
me to
community.
go watch some of my early videos where I'm asking people to please get me to 500 because that's the only way you can get in the algorithm.
Right. Well, I mean, this is not my doing. This is other booktubers that have
Right.
shared.
It's a bigger community now, I think.
It,
It's
it,
really
r-
supportive. It's real
it
supportive.
is. There's no way this happens, for me the way that it did. Had I started when you did, or even a few years ago. But I've mentioned when I decided to do this, or actually decided to try it, I wanted to try to put my best foot forward production value wise, because I was not confident that anything that I had to say would resonate with anybody. So I said, all right, well, I sell all my products on my Bell Flask. Somebody had asked, by the way, about my business. It's called bellflask.com. You can take a look at it, but I sell everything on Amazon, and I am intimately familiar with the return policies because I get them every day, like every other seller on Amazon. And I said, I can buy all this stuff. I can return it in probably more than 30 days if history as a seller has taught me anything. Let me throw this stuff out there. The worst case is everybody says I'm terrible, or I watch it back and go, this is garbage. I'm
What was
better
thinking,
off
yeah.
just not doing this. And I'll send everything back. And no harm, no foul. I had no experience with video editing. I didn't know anything about any of this. So I thought, all right, I'll put the best foot forward. Come on with some decent production value. Hopefully, I have something interesting to say that people will come back after watching, one time. So,
Well, Brian, let me tell you that never goes away. Year 5, I still have great moments of doubts and pain, and think that people are going to get bored of me. They're going to think I'm getting repetitive, and they're not going to want to watch anymore. I'm stunned. I'm in year 5 of this. I never thought that it would get to that point where people had any interest in listening to what I had to say, especially the people that have been here since like 2020 or before. You
right.
know, so that's amazing to me. Like I said, I wanted to create a positive community. I think I have created a positive community now where there's people who like are on the Discord that have no interest in watching anything that I produce. They just appreciate the community, and that's fine. I want to make sure that I provided that space for people to do that. But yeah, you'll never stop. I was the video I recorded tonight. It's a Dune video that I did right before we got on here. I've already sitting here going, that sucked. That wasn't any good. You know, and then I'll edit it. I'll be like, I guess it's fine. And then people will watch those kind of videos and I'll be like, oh, I loved it. It was great. I'm like, really? So I was like, you never stop doubting yourself. We're our own toughest critics. It's normal.
I think so. And one of the things that I love so much about your channel, and also now kind of a talking stories getting, a bigger jump too, is that you guys are able to captivate viewers on a weekly update. I've tried to do that. It's a bad idea for me to do it. It doesn't get any traction. It actually hurts my channel. I don't like seeing, if you guys are a booktuber, you know what a 10 out of 10 means. I don't want to get a 10/10, and that's what my weekly updates do. So I am very envious of you in a way that you're able to put
I'm
together that weekly update and people tune in for it.
I'm so happy people watch those. That's my favorite video every week. Full stop. I mean, I love it's because I feel like it makes it more personable when you do share some life things. You know, there's some people who are going to be like, get to the point, bro. You're rambling, and I still get that all the time. Like, well, why your views have to be 20 minutes long? I'm like, that's just the way I am. You know, that's the format that I'm going for here. And I will ramble. I will go on tangents. You know, that's what happens if you're in a real conversation with someone. It's going to happen sometimes. And like I said, I listened to feedback, and the feedback was people liked it when I did stuff like that. So that's why I stopped cutting it out of videos, you know, and they liked it, you know, one take Jake, as I call it. You can do that.
Mhm.
it's just fun that way. I don't know. It's just how it works.
Well, I think it's awesome, and John Minton's been able to do the same thing. What he does on Sunday nights, he does his, kind of his weekly reader, and it's similar. I think for me, I got to just get the channel bigger, and then maybe it'll be a little bit more interest in it. But I was actually talking to Madison about this on Instagram the other day about content, because I had been doing, prior to these live streams, I had been doing basically 2 videos a week, a Tuesday release and a Friday release. And my plan was to really not even ever do live streams, because I didn't know if I would be any good at it, or if I would like it, or if anybody would even want to come on the show. But what I was starting to figure out was is that me doing 2 videos a week was sort of diluting my ideas a little bit. Like, if I can't do a weekly update and I can only do a monthly video really once a month, what am I really putting out there that's of any value to anybody? Because I like how you say your mission. We are probably the only 2 booktubers that actually have mission statements on our fantasy book
Business
channel.
major is showing through.
Right? I mean, with Mike's, mission statement of building a positive community, and mine is really about providing value. And that's either in the book recommendations or just pure entertainment or whatever it is, just a break from life a little bit. Or it could be the one for the road stuff, that just a couple of things I've picked up along the way that might help somebody out. Mine's all about value. And what I started to think about was, am I really providing value with this extra video a week? Or am I just trying to build the channel and get more subscribers by putting out more videos? So it's been kind of a fine line. And Madison was really smart about it. And she just said, look, if you've got a great idea for a video, make a video, but you don't need to always do it just for the sake of doing it, or you'll dilute your good ideas.
Sure, and that's why I went down to 3 videos a week, because I felt like, I don't know, I thought maybe I was giving people too much, because I know everybody can't have, over an hour of videos to watch from someone every single week. And I
Right.
just thought I've always wanted to stress quality, over quantity. That was always something I wanted to do, and I was like, I'm always going to do my weekly video, and I feel like it's less stressful if I make just 2 decent videos. But my problem is I have more ideas than time. I have way more ideas for videos, and then there's some of them I'm like, I think that's a neat idea. I'm just not sure my audience thinks that's a neat idea,
That
and that will play into it a little bit. And then people are always like, make whatever you want. I think I do, but I also like to listen to my audience. I don't think you'll understand what I say is I listen to my audience. If that's something that my audience doesn't want, why would I make it? Because I am here not just to toot my own horn. I want to give people entertainment. Like I said, if I can give someone 1 minute of entertainment, a crappy day, like they tell me, oh, my drive to work sucks, and you made it better. That's awesome. I love hearing stuff like that.
it's the
That's
best feeling.
amazing.
It's the best feeling in the world. And that was actually another question that I had for you, but I'll lead into that. I mean, when you have these kind of passion project videos that you want to do, that are important to you, that you feel like you have something to say, and this is not your first rodeo, you've been doing this for 5 years, you have a pretty good sense of how it's likely to perform. You might be wrong, but I think you have pretty good odds of being pretty correct about it. How do you navigate that? Like, when do you say, this is a passion project, I'm doing it, I don't really care if it's on my flop of the month video next month that it's my worst performing video? How do you do that?
I feel like it was something that just like it's a part of me, like my Stephen King reviews. You won't ever get me to stop doing that. I mean, ever. I mean, I don't care if it gets 12 views. I'm not going to stop doing my Into the Multiverse stuff. That's my favorite author ever. So I'm going to keep doing that. But I think you could look at something to be like, yeah, I'm getting feedback from people that they have no interest in watching this. So, okay. Yeah, that's why. I mean, I was doing like all these crazy amount of Malazan content when we were doing a read along. I felt like that was justified. And the more and more people started dropping out, obviously, interest in those went down. But it's just, for an example, like the manga stuff. I mean, I know my audience isn't crazy about manga, because the people that like manga, they like manga channels. They don't like, someone who talks about sci-fi and fantasy. But if I feel like talking about it, I'm going to do it. And that's why I did the One Piece ones, because I knew that Philip and Murphy and Alan and I were going to be talking about it. So I said, hey, why not? Why don't I go ahead and talk about these that way? Since I am waiting for Philip now, I can go back to this and say, hey, where was I again? I feel like that's stuff I'm going to do just to kind of keep it fresh. But am I ever going to be like, oh well, every single manga I read, I got to do a review? No, no, I'm not that channel, and I don't do a review for
Right.
everything that I read. That's what the weekly updates are for, and that's why I've been isolating some of those smaller segments now for when someone is curious about just my thoughts on one quick little book. And they also hate that I do 20 minutes. Like, you know how many messages I get a week of people asking me, "You think you can make your reviews shorter?" No, I can't. That's just not my style, man. That is shorter. I did
Right.
shorten it.
Right. They don't, I mean, I tell you, it's incredible to me that everybody seems to know exactly what the creator should do when they haven't created anything yet. Um,
Oh man, you have no idea. When I talked about just, I think I made a tweet a while back. You might have actually seen it where I just said that people ask why I don't do just a lot of standard reviews anymore, and I was like, look at everything. Every single time I put it out, 10 out of 10. This video isn't performing as well as all the others, and it's just like it sucks because I like doing that, and then I get so many people like, oh, know your audience and blah 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 blah. I'm like, dude, you're an egg avatar with 12 followers and a blog. I'm
right.
not saying that I'm like the world's most successful man, but stop acting like you are a war veteran here telling me how to live my life. So
Right.
that stuff does get annoying sometimes, but there's always going to be a lot of that. But you do, it's true. You do need to know your audience,
I,
and I think that that's something you got to look at.
And it gets to kind of the, like you said, the mission statement of creating that community that people are gravitating to what you do. It's not just you putting out whatever the hell you
Right.
want to do and, take it or leave it. I think there's channels that do that. They're never probably going to accomplish the level of success that you have because look, you're a business guy, you're a marketing guy. You have to give the people what they want. And if
Sure.
you decide that you're going to force feed them what you want to give them, the audience is by nature going to be smaller.
Yeah.
And there's probably plenty of booktubers that are very happy doing that. It's just, as like I said, as business people, we want to see success in some regard. And I think Bookborn made a great video talking about the gamification of content creation because on the back end of BookTube, we see these fireworks going off and we see how videos perform versus, each other, not booktuber to booktuber, but video to video from the same booktuber. That gamification absolutely puts a weird kind of an energy to it. So
It does, and in the end, it isn't all about that. And I see people think that I'm like obsessed with it. I'm like, guys, I work in freaking analytics. Of course, I'm going to look at this kind of stuff. So with me, I'm goal oriented. I like to set personal goals for myself, and if things aren't performing the way they are, I say, what am I doing wrong? To me, that's how you get better. It's not complaining. It's not whining. It's just saying, what can I do to improve? It's me trying to listen to my audience. So yeah, you look at those analytics, especially if you're obsessed with them. And me and you kind of had a personal conversation about this, about peaks and valleys, man. I was like, dude, every year around January, I'm like, oh, has my time on this platform like run its life because it's all going downhill? It happens every year. It is something that YouTube does around New Year. It just happens
yeah,
every year. So peaks and valleys. I mean, there'll be so many times where like, oh man, growth is taking off like a rocket. I've made it, and then you'll get like 2 months of nothing.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
just it still happens. It still happens to me.
I think that that's really good for everybody else to hear who happens to be in the chat or watching on replay that is either currently creating content or is thinking about creating content to understand that. I think the words you used were peaks and valleys, and it is absolutely the case. And sort of kind of like Amazon for me, it's really difficult to know what those AI overlords, the algorithm overlords, are going to do. And so you put your best foot forward. You try to give people what, they seem to resonate with. But at the end of the day, we're still not totally in control of how it goes. So I think giving the people what they want is an awesome mission statement. Let me switch gears for a second. We're going to get back to books in a second. You and I are both video gamers. We love them. Let me ask you, and personally for me, I gravitate more towards narrative style, story driven video games. Oop, there's Mike. You back with us?
Yeah, but look
Yep.
like you bounced out. With my
One of us,
Wi-Fi, you never know.
it could be, but
Yeah, I'm single player campaign story mode. I don't do all this PvP open world. But well, I mean, I do open world if it's a story like a contained story. But multi online gaming, all that stuff. That's not really my bag. Or these overly difficult games everybody plays. Like
Elden Ring.
everyone. I'm not going to play Elden Ring. It's too hard.
Same. Same here. I think I saw a comment from you at one point that you were around for Ninja Gaiden, and that was enough. Yeah, same here. I can't do Dark Souls. I watch Alan play on his stream. He does Dark Souls. He streams it sometime, and I'm blown away. The guy is an excellent video gamer. But when you talk about video game narrative stories, what are some of your favorites that you've played over the years, story wise, that you feel like the video game way of presenting that story was the perfect medium for it, maybe even better than a book?
I think about some of my favorite like storylines. It's kind of like a cult classic now. At the time, it felt like no one was playing it. It was a series called Legacy of Kain. They used to love Vampire Story, Soul Reaver, Blood Omen, and then they made like Legacy of Kain Defiance, just like a really, really good adult vampire story. And that was really, you had your gameplay, but it had a lot of story driven elements. But I mean, honestly, even though it's like a fairy tale that's been told a million times over and over again, I mean, Zelda is my favorite franchise in gaming. I've always loved it. As a fantasy fan, I don't see why you wouldn't. I love something like Legend of Zelda. So even though it might not be straight storytelling, it's more of adventuring. That's always been my favorite franchise. But I think about some of the games that like I really just got like obsessed into. Some of the Final Fantasy games, like back in the Super Nintendo days, Xenogears on the PlayStation One. And then there's games where it's more about atmosphere, like Subnautica. That's just such a cool game. But Fallout 3 was probably the
Yeah.
last one where I got like obsessed with the lore, and I was like reading about the fake histories and all that
Isn't
stuff.
that crazy?
That one really kind
Did
of
you
took my
play New
life over for a
Vegas?
minute.
Did you play Fallout New
I
Vegas?
did, yeah.
That is an incredible game. What about the Outer Worlds? Did you play that one at all?
I did. I felt like I don't know. I felt like it was too fetch questy. I don't know.
It,
I'm beginning to wonder if maybe the Bethesda style is just kind of
I
starting
think
to
it's
run a
I think
cycle for
I
me. I
think
don't know.
it's
I mean, I still will pick up Skyrim and play a new build today and play it for 100 hours with no problem. But again, that's about immersion, I think, more than I think than the storyline. But I mean, I enjoyed Starfield. I did. But after like my 60, 80 hours, I'm like, I don't think I have any interest to go back to it though.
Did you
That
finish the main story?
I did. I did. So I mean,
Was
I
it
liked it. I liked it.
did they take it from the Dark Tower
I
at
mean,
the end?
I mean,
Kinda.
I could see that. I didn't think about it that way until just now. But I don't know. I think maybe just that formula is just starting to get kind of, it's run its course for me. I feel like you look at like something like Mass Effect Andromeda, like they made that, and it took them so long to make it. By the time it came out, gamers had kind of moved on from that
Hmm.
style of gameplay, and
Yeah.
I think maybe that's just like what's kind of happening with Bethesda now. Is I feel like maybe gamers are just kind of moving on, from that style of gameplay, and they need to come up with something new.
I think you're right, but I think that, sadly, as we all know, as gamers, the development cycle is forever.
Yeah.
It's 5 to 10 years per game. And if you get it even a little bit wrong, like Starfield, I mean, it's good for what it is, but it's certainly not the 10-year, development
It's
that
not a game of the generation or something. Yeah.
no, not at all. And so I don't know. Did you play Cyberpunk at all?
Did not. It did not. When it came out, it was I didn't have a next gen system yet, and I didn't think my computer could handle it. And it came out like broken on the PS4 and the
Right.
Xbox, and I was just like, I'm just not even going to do it. Now apparently they fixed it. They did a No Man's Sky. They took their time.
Yeah.
They fixed it now, and so I like that. There's a complete edition that's out for the Series X. I was thinking about getting that complete edition because it even has the new expansions on it. Or
The
whatever. So now that
Liberty.
it's actually a working game, I might play it.
It's awesome.
Is
It
it?
is awesome. And if you ever decide to read Neuromancer, you haven't read Neuromancer, right?
Uh,
So if you ever read that one, you'll see where all of it came from because the author, why is the name not coming to me? I can't remember the name of the author. Somebody in the chat
William
will.
Gibson?
Yeah. William Gibson. He invented all the terminology basically for cyberpunk. So it's a pretty neat thing that if you decide to pick up Cyberpunk 2077, which is a huge recommend from gamer to gamer, I think you'll really.
I was excited for it as someone who sunk probably 400 hours in The Witcher 3. Yeah, I was all about
Yeah,
I remember I first got deflated when I found out it was going to be first person because I say I'm just tired of first person games. You know, I wanted the third person. That's what Witcher gave to me. I kind of wanted that style. But it just, like I said, when it came out broken and just all the negative feedback, it just kind of fell off my radar. And I said, maybe they'll do like No Man's Sky and they'll fix it over time. And it sounds like they have. So good for them.
it really is. And if you kind of like that Asian aesthetic that, we're getting, obviously it's the future, but there's definitely some Shogun elements to it as well that I think you're going to really love a lot. Where was I? I wanted to take a quick look here. So you've had some incredible authors on your channel, and we could go on forever about having Pierce Brown on the channel and having Fonda Lee and having Ryan Cahill, and those are fantastic. Can you share with us some interactions that you may have had either on camera or behind the scenes with maybe some just regular either booktubers or fans of your channel that left an impression on you outside of, like, say, the famous people that we've seen on the channel before?
Yeah, I have every month we would have my patrons is if they're at a certain tier, as we would always have a Zoom call. That was something that I said that I wanted to make them feel like they had access. You know, I mean, because I honestly I wouldn't be able to do some of the things I do without them, and not just monetarily, but just like their support. You know, just showing that they care, that they felt like I want them to feel like they were a part of the channel. So we would have our private discussions. You know, it's just like a big old group, and it's basically like my wife said. It's like it's just basically my book nerd club, and it's just so fun, and I feel like I built a lot of relationships with those people now where I consider us friends. You know, I really do because I think about something big happens in my life. One of the first things I do is go and I tell some of my patrons about it. You know, and that's
That's
almost
awesome.
that's really close friends. And I said I've made so many relationships now. Like Madison's one of my best friends. You know, and never would have happened without this. So uh, no one I can really name particularly that like has like inspired me or anything. But I feel like I'm a part of people's lives where they can share like personal life things with me now,
Hmm.
and that's really really awesome.
And I would expect, or I would suspect that you've gained from that as well.
Mhm.
That it's not a one-way street where they're just sucking your energy. You're getting it back as well
Oh,
from
absolutely.
the interaction. That's super cool. I think that's because you've built that big community and your Discord is gigantic. Do you feel in any way that it becomes difficult when your community gets as big as you are to try to stay on top of the community?
That's why I have moderators who do a lot of hard work for me.
Yeah,
Because everybody, when the channel was, I was over about 10,000, and people like, you need to make a Discord. And I was like, I don't want another social media that I've got to try to take care of. And they're all like,
right.
no, you get moderators, let them take care of it. I was like, no one's going to care to do that. Turns out people do. People do, and have a really, really great staff. They really they do a good job of, making sure that people are following the food. Like literally, it's very few rules on there, but we try to keep it a positive environment. So we do have to
Right.
have some in place, but they do a great job of that. I could be better at spending more time on other channels on my own Discord than I do. But it's just people ask, how do you have time to do all that stuff? Well, you got to make some sacrifices, and some of my
Right.
sacrifices, like I can't go through 40 different threads on my Discord and talk to everybody, but I try. I try to do my best.
I think that the community that you've cultivated understands that for the most part. When they see a channel that's got over 100,000 subscribers and a Discord that literally has thousands of people in it, it's a full-time job for you. If that's all you did was do Discord, that could be a full-time gig. So I think that that's a wise thing that you've been able to find competent and trustworthy moderators to keep the Discord with the main kind of vibe that you set out to do before you had the moderators in the first place.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. It's one less thing I got to take care of, like I said.
I get it. Do you think that, I guess we've talked about this a little bit, but how much, like when we started the program tonight, I listed off that laundry list of all the books that you've inspired me to read directly, that I have read 100% because of that. Where do you go when you want to get recommendations that besides just people chatting, where are your inspirations for booktubers or reviewers that you rely on that get your tastes?
Every time someone recommends something to me, the first thing I do is ask Patrick if he's read it, because Patrick's right more often than not when it comes to my likes and dislikes. Him and I, we don't share a brain. I wouldn't say anything like that, but we usually tend to like a lot of the same things. That's why he knew I was going to love the Priest of Bones that I just read, and he knew I was going to love Bound the Broken, just like I knew he was going to love Sun Eater. I feel like we kind of complete each other's sentences in that way sometimes. But yeah, Patrick's usually my go-to to say, okay, not only can I see if he's read it, but he's probably got some 10,000 word review that I can read and see about why it's great. So, I mean, I would have
Right.
never discovered, or I don't know about never, but I wouldn't have discovered John Gwynn as fast as I did if it wasn't for Patrick and things like that. So, yeah, I'll always be thankful for that. But yeah, Patrick's my go to usually.
Pet, he is reliable, except for Cradle, right?
Yeah, he likes Cradle. He loves Name of the Wind's one of his favorite books ever. So nobody's
Yeah.
perfect, I say.
Look, we're always look. If we all agreed on everything, life would not
Right.
be interesting.
Absolutely.
So, but no, I mean, what blows me the way most about Patrick is that not only is his very so insightful when it comes to books and understanding what makes a book work for him and being able to explain what worked and what didn't in a very competent way. He's not doing it in his native language.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, can you even imagine? It's like he's my go-to guy, other than yourself as well, along with Philip for recommendations. And it blows me away that this
I
guy
think
is
I know about 500 words in Spanish, and even that's like, so I can't even imagine.
I call him BookTube's most huggable content creator.
Yeah,
Everybody wants to give Patrick a hug, I think.
I think so. Yeah, he's a great dude.
Have you again? If I'm bouncing back and forth, please interrupt, or if you've got something on your mind. But have you noticed any trends or shifts in the fantasy or sci-fi market recently at all? Just because you read a lot and you have so much, sent to you, both in
I
book
think
hauls
I've
from
noticed that.
publishers.
I think that I've noticed that Dragon Rider fantasy is getting really big again. We had that boom when Inheritance Cycle first came out. I think for a lot of people, when people first got interested in Song of Ice and Fire because of Game of Thrones was popular on TV. But like we had, then it kind of had like a lull, and now I'm seeing Dragon Rider fantasy like tons of it everywhere. So I think that's kind of making a little bit of a comeback, which is cool. I like dragons, that's
Right?
why I read this genre, So I'm always for it. But I think that's something I'm noticing a lot of.
I love how Ryan Cahill has done his series without any spoilers to anybody who hasn't read it. And by the way, you should go read it. And if you go sign up for his email, you'll get the novella free. The first one, The Fall, which is excellent. By the way, did you read The Fall first? Did you read the first one? You did.
I read The Fall first, and I was like, "Holy batshit, this is amazing!" I don't even
Right?
understand what just happened, but it's amazing. Yeah,
That just, I mean, it does not let off the gas for
it's crazy.
the whole thing. And I did it the other way. I read book one first. I think is it a Blood and Fire or Fire and Blood, one of the two.
Blood and Fire.
Blood. Yeah, I get them mixed up all the time.
I always want
But
to say Fire and Blood because of George R. R. Martin's. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I did it the other way. And I think either way is fine. But
Absolutely.
talk about what a unique concept where they are not only bound, but that they can be broken. And that's something that I've not seen for as many fantasy books as you and I have ever read. I don't recall that as a concept before. Have you?
I've seen, like animal companions, and then they feel heartbroken, but never where like
Right.
it's a part of you, and like you're just not going to be the same ever.
Where you're like physically and spiritually
And I'm
crippled.
sure it has happened, because a lot of times I'll say like, "Oh, this is the first experience I have with that." I'm sure it's happened somewhere else before. It's just like
Right.
my first experience with it. But yeah, I love that.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of books that, have been written that we haven't read. So that makes some sense to me. What has surprised you, say, in the last, I don't know, year or so, either in BookTube itself or just like the indie thing that's become so prevalent that I think a little bit maybe like you, I know I was not an indie snob, but there was a big part of me that for many, many years thought that if these authors were any good, they'd be signed by a publisher. Have you had similar thoughts in the past, and kind of
Oh, sure.
has this indie thing kind of taken you for
There
a
was
turn a
there
little
was
bit?
two reasons I kind of stayed away from indie stuff for a while. One, I get a billion requests a week, not even kidding, of people that want me to read and review their stuff, which I understand. It's cool. I appreciate that they think of me. It's like I'm never going to have time to do all that. So I kind of stayed away from it because I was worried that if I reviewed one person's independent book, then boom, why won't you review my book? You know, and I didn't want to upset anyone that way. So that's why I kind of stayed away from it a while. But I also, yeah, I was completely ignorant. I was completely ignorant. Thought, oh well, if you haven't been published, you're probably just not good enough. I didn't realize until I was actually talking to Michael J. Sullivan, and I actually asked him, hey, how much courage did it take to leave orbit and go out on your own? He's like, are you kidding? I make way more now. I have so much more
Right.
freedom. I can release on my schedule, and it was like, wow, I didn't really thought about like that. And then when I listened to Ryan's business model, and I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And the fact that you can communicate straight with your audience, and you can say, hey, this book's going to come out this year because I said so. That's
Right.
awesome. I love things like that. And I was talking with Tori about this, and Tori was saying, everybody talks about, oh, well, self-published, and they have spelling errors and grammatical errors and stuff. Dude, I will read AAA trade books that have spelling errors in it, and I was like, that's a damn good point, Tori. So yeah, it happens all over the place. So I think that was just me. I did have a little bit of that just ignorant point of view where I said, hey, they can't be good enough. And then I started realizing, every author that I love right now at one point wasn't a signed author, and it didn't mean that the story. Well, I mean, like, think about The Long Walk by Stephen King. He wrote that when he was 16 years old, and he published it
It's
later.
insane.
And it's amazing, So yeah, it was a big eye opening thing for me. And that's the thing about this. I feel like I'm not right about everything. I just want to make sure that I can keep learning on some of these things. That's when I'm glad because I've discovered a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have with kind of my closed views on some of that stuff.
I'm with you there, and that if it wasn't in Barnes and Noble, there was probably a reason for it. But as I've matured and began to understand the industry a little bit, and talking to some of these people, you know, if you can cultivate the sales and marketing skills and the organizational skills that not all creatives have, because that's just the realities, because some people are amazing creatives and they can write a hell of a novel, but if it comes to marketing it or selling it or even figuring out how to appropriately price it or any of that, it's a whole new skill set. So I think in a way, these indie authors that are making some, headway right now, they've developed some pretty, unique talent that not all creatives have.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things where you need to have people who know some stuff, and I think that nobody can really do something like that. I can't even imagine over just doing a task of that nature because first off, most people who are authors or readers are, I mean, they're introverts usually. That's why I talked about with BookTube. It's helped a lot of people to kind of break out of their shell because they were nervous about talking on camera and things like that. I think about like as an author, think that you spent sometimes 10 years writing your story. And first, you're always just going to think everyone's going to reject it, right? So not only do you have to do that, but then you have to worry about how do I sell it? How do I get it in people's hands? So I think it just I can't even imagine trying to take on a task like that and then doing it by yourself without the support of a major
Right.
publisher. That's amazing. Really. It really is.
Right. And I think that, in some regard, when somebody gets signed to a publisher, they think that that's, the end of the road and everything is, gold and riches, but it just sort of depends on what you signed,
You're
because if
only as good as your last book sold. Yes, that's the truth.
well, that's right. And unless there's probably something in writing about what they're going to put into marketing the book and that you're going to be guaranteed placement at
Uh-huh.
retail.
I've heard some horror stories about how they'll hold people's books hostage and stuff so they don't have to pay them. That's terrifying to me.
Right. And, with the consolidation, and as a business guy, you can appreciate all the mergers and acquisitions that happen in every industry, but particularly now in publishing. The New York publishing houses are basically controlling that entire sector. So, I look at a Barnes and Noble, for example. similar to like a Target, where these brands will come in and they will buy up, the grocery store space. They will buy the end caps. And I suspect that that's very similar for traditional publishing in the New York houses, that they just say, these are the books that you are going to show at retail, which really forces these indie authors into a whole new skill set. So I had a feeling you'd have some ideas on that, and you
No, I'm
do.
just like
So
looking at your bookshelf right now, and I'm jealous. You still have enough space that you can front face some things. I remember my days of front face. You can watch some of my early videos where I still have space to front face some things.
here's why.
Now I got stacks.
Here's why. The hidden secret. I probably have more books in ebook format than I do in physical.
Oh,
And just even the Robin Hobb books alone would probably pull a whole shelf or two. Uh, all the Dresden books would pull a shelf or two. Yeah, so it's weird because I want them in physical, because we kind of get addicted to having a library, and it's super fun to walk into your space and you feel like you're in your own little world in your library. But yeah, I wish I had all the ebooks that I have in physical, for sure.
yeah. See, then you get my problem. Then you start buying like multiple copies of one book. Like I said, I talked about Dune earlier, and I was in the middle of the video, I realized, hey, I've got a problem because I've got 3 copies of most of these books in the series. How about that? Good
So
times.
do they all line up together on the shelf, or how do you got it going?
No, my old trade paperbacks, or sorry, my mass market paperbacks that I read in high school, it's just like nostalgic.
You got to
I can't
keep
let
it,
go of them. I
but you got to
can't let
keep
go of
it.
those. I mean, that was
Yeah.
me finding myself. Like I said, I can't let go of those. And then I bought when they put out the new trade releases a couple years back, and then I started buying these the deluxe editions right here, and it's just like it's collector's problems. It
It,
happens sometimes.
it is. So prior to BookTube, were you collecting books at all?
I mean, you can go back and watch his earliest videos, and I have 2 bookshelves that are right here, and it was just Stephen King and a handful of fantasy. That's all it
Okay.
really was. So I was trying to, I had tried to collect all Stephen King in hardcover, and I do now. But at the time, I still didn't have everything. But I'm still trying to replace some book club editions that I've had, since I was in this book club. But then it's also that, like, but I don't want to get rid of those because, like I said, I got those when I was in high school. I have great memories with those. So that's where you run into the problem. It's like, okay, well, I need to unload some of this stuff, but I don't want to let go of it. I've had it for my whole life.
It's hard. It's like I've seen plenty of booktubers do their unhaul, right? Or they'll sell off their books on Pango Books, or they'll do whatever. I can't fathom doing it. I'm very attached. I think maybe it's because I have so many books in or on e-copies rather than in physical, that I don't want to dwindle down my physical as much. But yeah, there is certainly a sentimental, attachment that certain books will have, particularly if you've had them for a long time, even more so than those quote unquote big special editions. If something is more meaningful to you, I can imagine that, yeah, that's not
Like I
one
said,
you're getting rid
those
of.
old beat up Dune paperbacks, I will never. Those will be handed down to my kids, and they can get rid of because they won't give a shit. But
Right.
but these it won't be me having to get rid of them. Maybe I'll
That's
just say bury me with them. Who knows?
it's like, I think I was watching Brian Lee Durfee the other day, and he was talking about he's got like 5,000 or 6,000 books or some kind of crazy number like that at his place. And I'm just
I wouldn't be able to do that until the kids were gone, and
right.
I could turn the playroom out there into an actual library. That would be the soonest I could do something like that. But no, I'm confined to this office right now, and
For
I've
now.
got racks in the closet now. So
But when the kids move out, and if you decide you're not going to sell the house, the walls come down,
that's it.
and now we've got Mike's gigantic library.
That's it.
And yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Because I was like saying, like, hey, when the kids are gone, we gotta sell this house. It'll be too big for just us. And she's like, please, you don't want all that space for books. Like, that's a good point. That's why I married you. You made me think of these things. We
How
can
long
reconsider.
how long have you been in your house?
About 5 years.
About 5 years.
Yeah.
Cool. And so you've got your remodeling project going on, which I won't bring up too much because I'm sure it's a source.
Oh man, it's every day there's something. And the thing was, like, it was going decent until we got to the point where they had to like put the countertops in, and it's just like 3 weeks ago they measured, and we still haven't gotten our countertops. And it took them over 2 weeks just to tell us that they messed up on something,
Oh
and so
man.
we went back to scratch. And like today, I was like, dude, I'm ready to just have you guys refund me, and we're gonna go somewhere else. It's gotten that bad. It's just
Right.
it's frustrating, guys. When you don't have your kitchen, it's like your life is a wreck. It's
I
a
think
wreck.
people forget. I mean, just like I was watching you the other day and you were talking about just having a sink and having countertops and how we just all
Dude,
take it
do you
for
know how
granted.
frustrating it is to have to go into your bathroom to rinse your coffee mug? It's frustrating.
Right.
You don't think about how it's just something so simple. You don't even think about it. Plasticware and paper plates are fun for a while, because it feels like you're doing like a camp out or something like that. But it's been 6 weeks we've been doing this. And it's just like,
It's and how long did you expect it to take when it first started?
when we actually got the actual proposal, it was like 2 weeks. This will all be done.
Right.
2 weeks. So we expected,
What
okay, that'll be tough for 2 weeks. We're on 3 times that now, and no end in sight still.
yeah, it's hopefully it's more of a time sink than a money pit.
Yeah, no,
Because
no,
it's really
it's
their
paid
fault.
for. It's paid for,
Yeah.
and everything. That's why they're acting the way they are. They've already got their money.
Right.
So there's no reason for them to hurry. So that's why.
I know intimately well. Back about 10 years ago, we did a full club remodel. So we used to remodel the bar about every 2 years to kind of keep it fresh. But about 10 years ago, we went gung ho and we went bananas and we were going to redo everything. And we get in there and we're on day one construction. And I get a call from the landlord saying, "Hey, all the tenants in the building are complaining about hammers and saws. And you are not permitted to do any of this during the daytime hours. You have to have all your construction work done in the middle of the night."
Jeez.
So my 3 week remodel was a 3.5 remodel. The whole time we were shut down, no revenue, no sales, but the
Ouch.
rent continued. So I sympathize greatly with remodeling pains. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but
Fun.
I kind of am a creature of mood sometimes. And I think that, I tend to hide it pretty well when I'm on camera, but I certainly have my up moods and my down moods. I
Okay.
leave the down moods off camera for the most part. Have you found for yourself that when you film something, if you started off before you pressed play or record on your camera, that maybe you weren't in the greatest of moods, that you feel better having done a video?
Definitely. I mean, I'll have days where I'll be like, I don't really want to do that video today. Yeah, but I better go ahead because I don't know when I'll have enough time to record. And really, that's when I realize recording a video for me is no sweat. Editing's not fun, but that's not fun for anybody. But for me, it's like really, I just don't want to set everything up. I don't want to set my lights up. I don't want to set my camera up, all that stuff. That's really what it's like. I don't have a problem going to work, or I don't have a problem at work. I have a problem going to work. I don't want to drive to work. But
Right.
once I'm there, I'm fine. So
Yeah.
it's kind of similar to that, where it's like I never really treat this like a job or whatever. But there are some days where I'm like, I don't feel like doing that. And I realize I just don't want to set my equipment up because this is my office, guys. I actually work in here. So I can't just leave everything up. I have to set it up every single time. And sometimes that's why I try to record 2 or 3 videos at a time. So I
That's
don't have to
awesome.
do that multiple times a week. Yeah.
That's awesome, particularly if you can do those kind of one and done or the one take Jake types of stuff. And you talk for 20 minutes and take a break, have a coffee, and then
Yeah.
go do another one. That's awesome. The way that I have my setup is in my living room. And it gets me in the right mental state to do it, but it's in the middle of my living room. So I take this whole setup down when I'm not recording
Right.
because this is where I read and I don't want to read crammed with the couch, up against the wall to make room for the lights and all of that stuff. So
I'm with you.
I can appreciate that a lot. But I asked that question because I feel like, mood issues come up quite a bit on BookTube. And I think that there's been some pretty honest content creators that have gone through different, mental states and time. And I've always encouraged people as much as I can, even long before I started the channel, go film something because you'll feel better because you're going to be talking about something that you like. You're going to be, trying to get people in a positive, mood state, unless you're on some kind of a rant video, which this corner of BookTube doesn't really do. And I think it helps. So I'm glad you feel the same way there.
Sure.
What do you do when you get burned out? Because I think you had mentioned the other day that I call you and I call mad over Beard of Darkness, the two hardest working men in show business. That inevitably has to lead to some stress and burnout. How do you navigate yourself through that and still do everything that you're doing?
You talking about with books, or you talking about with videos?
I'm just kind of talking about maybe both. I mean, it's hard to constantly be doing something and not feel a sense of burnout after a period of time.
I'm one of those people. I'm very fortunate. I am a creature of routine. Again, I think it's, you work in accounting, you do the same thing a lot,
Yeah,
and you get used to it. I think with me, I like to do everything like the same order, like kind of every day. So that isn't really a problem when it comes to like reading. I always just switch genres if I'm
switch
starting to get.
genres.
But I mean, I have about at least twice a year where I'm just like I don't want to read at all. And then that does happen, but it's usually just a couple of days. And
Right.
that's fine. Like I say, it's as a hobby. It's my favorite hobby, so I love to do it. But I will have times like, you know what? I got a freaking migraine, and I'm just going to sit here and watch the baseball game today instead.
Right.
And that's fine. You should do that. You should do that. This isn't a job. But uh, with videos, it's like I said, I guess I just have a routine down to where it's not really a problem. I have a method. I want to get out, 2 videos during the week and my weekly update on a Friday or Saturday, which is all, done that day. And it's just kind of the thing that I do. But I haven't had really any burnout with the video making as much as I just well sometimes I'm like I wish I could realize what it is people want to watch. I will have those moments where I wish I could understand because I'll listen to feedback. I'm like, okay, this is something people want, and then I'll make it. No one wanted that. And I'm like, huh. So am I just listening to like the loud minority? What's going on here?
That could be very
Yeah.
true. I mean, the people with the loudest voices may not represent, the majority, like you said. And, you could put a poll up, and I've done that before too, where, I'm thinking about this, this, and this. Here are your three choices, and they all come in at 33.3%. And you're just sitting there going, well, that was effing useful, I suppose. So yeah, I don't know.
I just
But
always say, just if you're getting a rut, man, just change something up. Talk about something that's out of your comfort zone or something like that. Just do a video. If you just, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, I used to do stuff where, before I created my second channel, where I would just like, talk about like my favorite movies or something, just to kind of break the monotony up a little bit. But I've real big, and you probably know this. A marketing major number one rule was stay on brand.
yeah,
Always stay on brand. So it's always was like, well, do I really want to step out of that comfort zone and talk about something that, my audience necessarily isn't here for? So I never know. That's why when people are like, oh, you should talk about this, 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 I'm like, no, I'm a book channel. Why would I talk about that? Why would I talk about this real world event? I'm a book channel. I'm a guy talking about wizards and dragons, man, and big scary monsters. What do you care about what I think about stuff like that? So
and yet your
stay on brand.
Kindle and let your Kindle review videos do unbelievably well.
Well, I mean, you could tie that back in. I think the reason those did so well is because there's a billion tech channels out there that'll tell you how many teraflops it has and how many
Right.
DPI and stuff. Readers want to know what's it like as your primary reader. That's what they wanted to know, and that's kind of what I tried to provide there. So I will still have people be like, you didn't break down any technical stuff. Like, that's not what I do. You can find a billion channels out there that do that.
Yeah, but again, it's interesting because you put that out there, and I'm assuming that the first time you did a Kindle type of review, you probably had no idea the kind of traction that it would get.
No idea. It was really that was back when, like I said, I was first starting. I was in school full time, and I had no idea what this really was going to be. This before I even had a format or anything. I just said, I guess that's book related. I could talk about that. I just did like an unboxing, and it's terrible. Go back and watch my very first. It's awful video about making the switch from iPad to Kindle. Terrible, terrible video. I had no idea what I was doing. Did nothing for the longest time. Then for about a year, pow, it just
It's
took off.
it's
And I
so
still think
weird.
that is the biggest compliment to the growth of the channel. Was that channel put me in the algorithm big time, to
Yeah,
where a lot of my stuff started popping up, and that was like the turning point. It really was Kindle.
that's nuts. And I think in some regard, the more success you have, the more success you have, particularly when it comes to when someone's watching YouTube, for example. So you could have the same content as somebody who's just getting started off, and they could have an identical video, but here's Mike in with 110,000 subscribers. It's an obvious click for the average person out there. So that's really interesting to me that Kindle was the one that really kind of jump started, the algorithm for you.
Yeah, I think we're starting with Wheel of Time, because Wheel of Time has a really big following on BookTube. It really does, and that helped, but it was still a very small niche out there. But I think that those Kindle videos are really what opened it up. And the thing is, like, apparently I have this intoxicating voice where people can listen to me talk about anything. That's what they tell me sometimes.
It's
Some
true.
people.
And everybody,
So
I got to tell you guys, I'm going to interrupt Mike for a second, but I got to tell you something. So my family lives in California and they live in Florida. And over Christmas, I was totally by myself. And what did I do? Well, I work from home during my day job. And what I decided to do was do just my normal work. But Mike put out a reading of A Christmas Carol. And it was awesome. I sat there on I think it was did you do it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Did you
I
release it?
did like the 22nd and 23rd because I knew we were going to be busy. Or no, actually, I think I did Christmas Eve. I might have. I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but I was on vacation at that time. But I don't think I did Christmas morning or nothing.
I think, but when did the video launch prior to that, or
No, I think what
was
I did was I scheduled it all to go live like one after another. But I think it all was on Christmas Eve. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I remember watching that and I was so grateful that Mike did that because, and the reason why I'm thinking of this now is because Mike says he's got a voice that is easy to listen to. And I totally agree. And, there's, you and I have, I think, talked about it maybe back and forth on Twitter a little bit. And there's more to being an audible narrator because I'm sure you get all the time. Why don't you go narrate Audible books?
Bro, oh my God, I had no idea how much work it was. It's like one of those things where I said, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. Christmas Carol is like 92 pages.
Yeah.
And that 2 hours of audio that I made probably took about 12 to 14 hours to make
Yeah.
because you stutter once. Oh, I got to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now I am so glad that Philip did not ask me to read his books for him because I'd still be working on the first one probably. So yeah, I realized how much work. And the thing was, after I did that, I got so many people making me offers to read their book for them, and I was like, I can't, man. I just don't have enough time.
Right.
But yeah, I that now I would say I would have that would have to be a full-time job
Right.
if I was to work for Audible, no doubt. That's nothing I can do on the side.
I hope that you do more of that just for your own fun, not where you just maybe pick a book that doesn't take forever to
Yeah,
read.
people a lot have suggested for Halloween do some Lovecraft. I think I could do that, or maybe some Conan or something like that. Something that's short
Yeah.
stories. Yeah, I could probably do that.
And I think you probably have fun with it too.
Oh, sure, I had a blast until I just realized, oh crap, I'm glad I didn't just like open the book and read it live because I would have been a stuttering mess
Right.
apparently. So, and I asked my kid, I was like, "Do I stutter that much when I was doing it?" He's like, "No." I was like, "This must be in my head. Must be in my head because that's just the way that I read to him, and when we do our Percy Jackson or Harry Potter and stuff." So,
That's got to be an amazing feeling to read with your child. I did not have
it
that.
is.
My dad's not a reader. My mom's a reader, but I mean, I think the only thing she read me was probably Dr. Seuss. That's got to be a pretty, and I don't have kids of my own, so I don't know what that's like.
It's pretty cool, except it's just like I feel like now I've kind of spoiled him to the point where I know my oldest is going to be an audiobooker now because he has no interest in reading himself. It's like, well, I've got my
Okay.
dad to read it for me. And when he
Right.
gets to the point where he's like, oh, I'm too old for this, he's just going to put on the headphones. He's going to be one of them people. But hey, cool. Hopefully I've helped him break that side because me, I tried an audiobook and I'm like, I have no idea what you just said. And I think
That
that's years of listening to sports radio, which you can just zone out when it's nothing. They're talking about something you don't want to listen
right.
to, and it's
Right.
hard to stay focused sometimes on that because I will be doing something else and I'm thinking, and I won't even realize what I just listened to.
Right.
And with reading, you have to pay attention to details, and you miss something.
Yeah. I mean, particularly in the kinds of stuff that you read. I mean, if you're reading epic fantasy,
Oh, I'm
forget it.
jealous.
It's it,
Like when I met Madison, she had just finished reading Wheel of Time on audio in like
how
30 days. In like
how
30 days. I was like, this shit took me over a year to read.
right. But I don't even know how you keep track of it because you got a million characters.
Brains are wired differently. I don't know.
Right. Robert Jordan has all these character names that are similar. And how you would, I mean, I found myself when I went through the Wheel of Time going back, 3 pages, 4 pages, back to the prologue, trying to
Oh,
figure
I
out.
had an Excel spreadsheet when I started.
There you go, folks. He's a finance guy. But yeah, I mean, so for me, I have an audiobook going at all times, but it's 95% of the time lit RPG because that is a popcorn read for me. And
Sure.
if I miss a detail, it's no big deal. There's no giant, landscapes and epic scope stuff that if I tune out for.
Family histories and yeah.
Right. I can't imagine like doing something like Game of Thrones
Dude,
or
I heard people like audiobooking Malazan. Like, how?
how.
How? I don't even get it. I'm like, I'm reading it and I have to go back and read the paragraph I just read because you're telling me you're listening to this?
There's no way. I just started. We did a poll on the channel and I had asked everybody, all right, here's 10 series. You guys vote in the comments. Which one do you want me to read? And Malazan won by like 3 votes. And I was like, oh God. Okay. So now I'm starting this, right? While I'm still trying to do all these other series.
Oh, let me know when you get to book 8. Maybe I'll resume when you get to book 8.
Is that Toll the Hounds?
Yeah.
Okay, so I finished Gardens of the Moon. My reading month for February was just very compact because I read all of Shogun. I tried to do it the way that you're doing it. I couldn't
Man,
do it.
that's impressive.
I couldn't do it. I wanted to know what. See, I didn't watch the miniseries that you did in the 80s,
Yeah,
from
makes
the
sense.
80s. So I couldn't put it down. And my original plan was, all right, I'm going to do what Mike's doing. I'm going to get to book 3 by the time the show starts, which, by the way, the actress playing Mariko, if you're watching this, I'm single. I'm available.
She's gorgeous, isn't she? Whew.
I'm on day 635 of Japanese Duolingo. Hit me up. Find me in the comments. Anyway, where was I going with that? I don't even know.
If I didn't have this, yeah, I probably would have done Shogun straight through. But this,
Yeah.
like, I want to be able to talk about more than because, like, here I am, like, already. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm already kind of dreading my weekly update this week, where I get to be like, oh yeah, I'm still reading Shogun, you guys.
Right.
I feel like I'm going to bore people by talking about the same thing every single week. But yeah, that's why I try to change it up a little bit.
I think that's wise. I
knew people were going to be reading with me, and I knew not everyone's going to want to do 1,300 pages in a month.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I just got so addicted to it. I stopped at book 3 to go and read Gardens of the Moon. And I loved Gardens of the Moon. I don't know if
I just say like that combined with Shogun. Woo!
Yeah.
Hey.
So then my plan was to do Demon in White and then go back to Shogun. And after I finished Gardens of the Moon, I said, all right, I need to know what's going on with the Anjin Sun. I can't. I'll do Demon in White in April.
Demon in White. That took me 3 weeks to read. And it was like, it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying it, it was because I just felt like I needed to chew my food with that book.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see what you think.
Well, I'm 100 pages in. I like it. What I've decided to do is finish Sun Eater before I go back to Malazan, because it's bad for the channel for me to be so bogged down. Like you said, I could read 2 books a month at that point, maybe 3 books a month. And then I don't have anything to talk about, particularly, if my weekly update isn't really a thing that I can do quite yet. Yeah. So it'll be Sun Eater first. Then I'm going to hit Malazan, but at the same time, I want to do Janie Wirtz's big series too. And I know that that's going to be.
See, this is why I leave myself wiggle room, but this is why wiggle room for the smaller stuff. But this is why every year I'll pick a handful of new series that I'm going to start, because I know there will never be one that I wasn't expecting to start that I start out of nowhere. So I'm make sure that I leave a little room, but also so I don't just go all willy nilly and start 16 book ones, because I will do that. That's why I have to schedule. And that's why I'm a nervous wreck right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm not doing, what is the series that you're reading right now? The Priest of Lies?
War for the Rose Throne by McLean. Yeah.
It's on my TBR. I'm not touching it until I get done with a bunch of other series, because I just, like I said, when I looked at that, I've got 33 ongoing series, and in all fairness, some of them I'm waiting on forever. I mean, I included Song of Ice and Fire in that list, so it's not like it's waiting on me. But yeah, some of these books, man,
Did you do like Matt over at Go Reads and go get Blackwater, like I recommended?
I did not yet. I did not yet. I mean, I'm looking at this TBR, and in my mind, this February is the first time that I've quote unquote failed my own TBR, because I legitimately thought I was going to get all of Shogun, Demon in White, and Gardens of the Moon done. And it just didn't happen that way. And coming off of January with that whole crazy DNF challenge, reading a bunch of books that were insane.
That was a great idea, but I'm glad I didn't do it.
We'll do a sneak peek here. I'm going to do a similar thing this summer where I'm going to go back to all the same booktubers and get a book that I haven't read yet that they recommend. And we're going to have, it's going to be the redemption arc.
Oh,
I
cool.
think
I'll recommend Blackwater.
there you go. We've see, problem already solved, folks. That's what Mike
That's
does.
like 1A, 1B. That and Shogun are like
Really?
I don't know which. Right now, those are my leads for book of the year, and I don't know that I'm going to read anything this year that's going to top either of those. So I felt that way about Lonesome Dove. I felt that way
Yeah.
about Swan Song, and it turned out to be true. So I gotta start picking my book of the year in like January and February.
Right. Well, the same thing happened to me because I read Swan Song January 3rd of last year. And I legitimately said, there's no way that any other book is going to be the book of the year. And then, of course, I read Lonesome Dove when you did, and that took over. And it's crazy that here we are as these fantasy booktubers, and we're talking about, Lonesome Dove is the book of the year. It's Shogun.
Swan Song, Lonesome Dove, and Project Hail Mary are my last 3 books of the year. And I was like, none of them are fantasy.
Isn't that crazy?
It's just, that's why it's good to step outside your comfort zone sometimes and try other things. Switch up, try a fantasy book, try a Western book, try a thriller, because I think the Dark Matter was pretty damn close there a couple years ago, so it's good.
Absolutely. Off topic here. I know you are a pro wrestling fan. So am I. But my kind of background with professional wrestling was I was a giant fan as a kid growing up. I had a pro wrestling themed bar mitzvah where the centerpieces were all little wrestling rings. My house that I'm living in right now is maybe 8 blocks away from where the AWA filmed. So that's, where Mean Gene started, and Jesse the Body Ventura and Adrian Adonis and all those guys. They used to film right over here. Now, this is all leading somewhere, folks. Trust me. One of my favorite off-topic videos that Mike has ever done is his Mount Rushmore of rock and roll. Yeah. I love that video because Mike and I both are into the same music. In preparation for this, you guys, I listened to Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance twice today, 2 times today. Then I moved over to Stay in Class because I love that album too.
What's funny about Screaming for Vengeance was after Tori sent me her book, Bloodstones, I couldn't stop listening to Bloodstone by Judas Priest, and that's a good problem to have.
It is. Good problem to have. They're awesome. So let me ask you a question. You've done the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling? And I'll give you 2 honorable mentions.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I grew up on Hulkamania, so I felt like it would be remiss not to put the Hulkster on there.
Okay.
But I also, you're talking about territories here. I grew up about 10 minutes from the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where you go see Sting and Ric Flair fight for an hour, in Iron Man matches and stuff. So I'd have to put Sting and Ric Flair on there.
Okay.
Those are like 2 of my favorites. But then you get down, it's like, okay, so I got 1 spot left, and I got Rock and Stone Cold. Jeez.
Right. You get at 2 honorable mentions.
So okay, so basically 6. So those 5, and then I'd have to probably do someone like Superstar Billy Graham, someone who kind of like paved the way for some of these other people. Like Superstar Billy Graham doesn't get enough respect. It's like, dude, Ric Flair took a lot of his ideas from. So he gives a lot of credit to Superstar Billy.
Same with Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
Jesse Ventura molded his whole shtick right after Superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah, that's a tough conversation. It really, really is. Because I could probably. That's more of a. I got to do a top 20 list, I think. But for me, you struggle with, am I putting the greats or am I putting my favorites on there? But don't feel like any of those six would not be considered greats for sure.
Well, especially for what they've done for wrestling. I mean,
Yeah, I
without
mean, Sting just had his last match the other night, so I mean,
I
good for him,
saw
man.
that, I mean, I haven't followed wrestling since the 90s, so I'm totally out of
I'm
touch.
very casual on it now, and the fact is like the thing is, we got Peacock, and they've got all the old WWF stuff on there, and me and my kid have been watching some Attitude Era stuff, and he's just like completely enthralled with. He's like, "Why isn't this exciting now?" I was like, "Great question, son."
That's
But oh yeah, he's full on rock stone cold crazy right now, and I'm like, I have no problems with watching this stuff with you.
absolutely. I was the other day, I went and watched, I looked it up on YouTube, the Royal Rumble that I think Ric Flair was either number one or
Number
number
one,
two, and he won the whole thing. I
where he's
mean,
giving the interview at the end with the bloody head.
oh yeah,
Woo!
yeah. That's yeah, I'll tell you some
Tell you
stories
why I
off.
love Ric Flair is my brother was 6 years older than me, and he never really understood why I liked wrestling so much. But he would take it. Him and his friends would take me, because like I said, it was cheap to go see WCW back there when it was really before they blew up or whatever. And the wrestlers would be doing their shoot promos like right off to the side, right there by the crowd. And my brother and his friends were heckling Ric Flair, and he basically stops and says, "Shut your mouth, or I'll come over there and make a woman out of your girlfriend," or something like that. And I just died laughing.
Wow.
My brother just like stone face, like, "Oh my god!" Like I loved Ric Flair after that. Yeah, so
That
because he
guy,
don't cuss my brother.
that guy is, I mean, I saw him on Rogan's podcast, and if you haven't seen that, big recommend
How
on
that
the Ric
guy's
Flair
alive
interview.
is beyond me. Yeah.
Totally. I went out, I'll tell you sometime about a night that Rick Steiner and me and Sid Vicious went out in Las
Oh,
Vegas.
Michigan alums, huh? The
Yes.
Steiner Bros guys. All right, all right.
It was the weirdest thing. I met those guys playing blackjack. It was almost like a Austin Powers moment when Sid Vicious was standing on a nine, and I was like, no, you hit. There's no
I
card.
believe this story for sure.
There's no
Yeah.
card that you can hit, that you can get, that is not
Gonna
going to
bust.
benefit you in some way. You're not gonna be worse. So I sat and taught Sid how to play blackjack, and Rick is sitting next to me on the other side, and we started just having a blast. And
That's
I'll
awesome.
I'll tell you offline more about that night, but it ended somewhere around 7 in the morning with Steiner and me still we had at that point gone to, I didn't even know how many bars. But yeah, Flair was on.
I'll use wrestling references on the channel all the time, and like so many people, it flies over their head. But like, I'll always get a few dozen comments from people who know exactly what I'm talking about, and that's great. That's why I know I found my people.
It's super fun. Well, I promised only 2 hours for Mike tonight, so I want to keep it to that.
Yeah, I gotta go edit a video
He's
before
got to
bed.
edit a video. As you folks know, we always do one for the road on every segment that we do here. And I ask our guests if we can do it. I suspect next week when Philip Chase is on the channel, he'll have a dissertation for the
Oh, we'll
one
have a
for the.
soliloquy. Yeah.
I mean, we know a couple of things. For one, it will relate back to Beowulf in some regard. It will possibly be in Old English or another language that we don't know. I'm not sure. But for all of us, Mike, would you leave us with one for the road tonight? And again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you guys. If you're watching on replay, leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about tonight's episode. I think Mike's just like the ultimate guest. As you know, I've done 3 of these so far. And the only reason that Mike is guest number 3 is because I did not have technical ability to pull off a live stream, and I did not want the camera to fall apart. I didn't want the microphone to not work when I asked Mike to come on. So we're going to leave it with Mike. Mike, what's your one for the road for the group today?
So is this just supposed to be like words of wisdom? Oh man,
This
I don't
is
know.
this
You
can
know,
be anything. This is going to be any message that you would like to leave people with tonight as we close out the episode, and it could be really anything.
I was just gonna say, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. But I don't know. I think I should come up with something better than that. I think since Dune has kind of entered the pop culture zeitgeist now, I can say that seeing things like AI take a foothold and people not be able to have any conversations anymore because they've always got their face buried in some device. I'm just gonna say, maybe it is time for the Butler and Jihad to kill all thinking machines. All thinking machines got to go. I think. Let's just get this back on a humanity level. There's my words of wisdom.
I love it. That's
Death to
one.
the thinking machines.
That's death to the thinking machines, but I think that's an awesome one for the road, and it speaks to the humanity of us. And if we're not careful, I think that is in many ways putting us in jeopardy.
Right. Conversation, human interaction, these are all still very, very important. And I'm as bad as anyone, guys. I stick my face in my phone all the time, just like everybody else does. I can't, I mean, our internet goes out and I feel like I don't know what to do around the house. I mean, we all feel like that. But I'm just saying, don't forget to be humans. Don't forget to talk to each other. You go out to a social event, put the phone down and talk to people. Don't sit there and look at your phone while you're like, we'll go to like a get together and there's 5 people just all sitting together on the couch and they're all just looking at their phones, like not even talking to each other. It just breaks my heart a little bit.
I think it's awesome. I think that is good words of wisdom. See, you did come up with words of wisdom. You weren't sure, but they are wise words, and I can think of no better way than to call it tonight. For thank you for being here so much, Mike. I've wanted to have some engagement with you on a more of a personal level, and I think we've accomplished that tonight. I certainly hope it's not the last time you'll be willing to come on the channel.
Anytime.
And it's been fantastic. Thank you for everybody for watching tonight. Have a great night or a great day, or wherever it is, whenever you happen to be watching this. And we will see you next week on For Whom the Bell Tolls, because it is calling for you, Dr. Philip. And we will see you then. Thank you, guys.
Take care.